Order, please. This regular meeting of the Joshua Basin Water District Board of Directors for September 18 is now in session at 5:31 hours. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. The flag is just here. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United
States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation,
under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Determination of a quorum. General Manager Johnson, a roll call, please.
President Flowin,
Present.
Vice President Doolittle.
Here.
Director Fick.
Here.
Director Jarlsberg.
Here.
Director Short.
Here. Thank you. All directors are present in the boardroom. There is no request for remote participation. We have a quorum. Approval of the agenda. Do I hear a motion to approve this evening's agenda with the aforementioned amendments? In other words, we're going to hear finance first today to allow space for a late entry into this. Motion?
I move to approve the agenda as adjusted.
Second?
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Public comment. Hi, Bill.
Thank you.
This time is for members of the public to provide our comments. I was going to say arguments. Public comments on any district-related matter, whether appearing on the agenda or not. Under provisions of the Brown Act, the board is prohibited from taking action on items not listed on the agenda. At the discretion of the board president, comments on a particular agendized item may be deferred until that item is heard. Is there any public comment? General Manager Johnson, is there written, electronic, or voicemail comments?
None to my knowledge.
Thank you very much. Public comment time is now closed. Consent calendar. Consent calendar items are expected to be routine and non-controversial, to be acted upon by the board one at a time without discussion. At one time, without discussion. If a board member would like to an item to be handled separately, it will be removed from the consent agenda for separate actions. We have two items on the consent calendar. One is the draft minutes for September 4 of this year, and the other is a check register for July 2024. Does anyone want to remove an item from the consent calendar?
I do as well.
Which one?
The minutes.
Okay. And
The financial report,
You mean the check register?
that's
check register.
okay. So there are no items on the consent calendar. Item number 6 would then be the draft minutes and the check register. We'll take the draft minutes first.
Thank you, President Flowin. On page 6, in my, where I'm quoted on my report, I just want to note that news story about a criminal that was in Miami. I don't want anybody reading this to think that was local.
Okay.
Yeah,
Oh,
and I can't remember if I said that or not. Evidently, I may not have. So anyway, and that was all for me. Thank you.
Okay. Jarlsberg,
yeah, I had several items that seemed of interest to, yes.
what did I do wrong?
Oh,
Let's approve A.
oh, okay.
So I make a motion to approve the minutes with this change.
All those in favor, second?
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried.
We always forget that. I said we always forget that part.
I always forget everything.
Well.
I'm faking it. Director Charlesburg.
Okay, yeah, I had just a few things. I don't want to lengthen this meeting unnecessarily, but I think there are a few things on the check report that are worth noting for anyone listening to this or anyone listening in the future to a recording. On page 9, There were a couple of large, relatively large amounts that I thought it'd be interesting to have described under CalPERS, the $69,887 item. It's employer unfunded accrued liability contribution. If you could explain that, it'd be good.
Sure. On an annual basis, CalPERS requires a payment. This is a mandatory payment towards the unfunded accrued liability. We also made an additional discretionary payment. That is the 46,000. That's just two items.
Oh, good.
below that.
Yeah.
And I will take this opportunity. I was going to present this in my report later, but I'll take this opportunity to mention that 46,000 is the correct amount that was budgeted, and we paid the correct amount. But in a couple of the slides, when we were going through the budgeting process, there was an error that showed it as 36,000, but it was budgeted correctly and it was paid correctly. So I wanted to just put that out there as well.
But what is unfunded accrued liability? What is that?
So, okay, sure. Yeah. So the CalPERS, it continues to, the plan continues to accrue a balance due. And that is constantly adjusted as various components are adjusted in the plan, depending on how well the earnings do, if they make any changes to mortality rates. Even I learned recently that the inflation is a factor in those calculations. And so that unfunded accrued liability, that's just an amount that is in addition to what we're paying, what the employees and the employer are paying on a regular basis. And this annual
What is annual?
component, this is an annual,
Okay.
this large piece. And we can pay it in a monthly payment, but we save interest by paying it annually instead. And that additional discretionary payment as well puts us on track with a 15-year amortization schedule instead of a 20-year amortization schedule, which saves us interest. And I think I looked that up recently, and I think it was around 150,000 if we stay on track with that 15-year plan instead of the 20-year plan.
Okay, that's worth noting.
Yeah.
Thank you. And then the down towards the bottom of 9, County of San Bernardino ATC controller. Is that what it's supposed to say?
Yeah, it's auditor, tax collector, controller. And that was the LAFCO payment for our membership. It was, the check was voided and reissued there, but that is our annual LAFCO
Okay.
membership.
Another annual, good. Okay. But I have more. Let's see, what was it now? On page 12. About 2/3 down, the Southwest Networks IT services. I'm just curious about that. What do they do for that amount of money? And it's for 2 months? Or 3?
Yeah, that's a
July, August, September.
right.
That's the new Southwest contract. That's our IT company based out of Palm Desert. The owner was here doing a presentation. Sure. So we have a very robust IT contract with them that was linked up with the request of the board to include the annual pen test. So it's
Pen test?
yeah,
What you said? Does it stand for something?
it does. Stands for penetration test.
Oh, that's right, that's right. Sorry, I asked. Okay,
But yeah, it's
Yeah, okay.
it is increased a little bit. But
okay,
it's normal.
but that's a 3-month charge.
Yes.
Okay. Okay, good. I'm glad I brought that up again, actually. And then on page 13, it's not a lot of money, but it's something that we've been talking about, and I just thought clarifying utility cost management. And there's a couple of smaller amounts for SCE Savings Commission.
So if you remember, last year, we had UCM do an analysis of our electric bills to see where they could save us money. And then for 3 years, they earn a percentage of those savings. And then after that, the savings belong to the district.
So this is their percentage of savings. So
Because the electric bills were found to be pretty accurate, which we were lucky
Oh.
to have. We were hoping a bigger saving.
Right.
But the good news is that they were accurate, so that's good.
Okay, good. I'm glad I asked about that too. Thank you. And I think that's all I had.
Okay, item, I guess we'll call it 6B, the check register. Is there a motion to approve that?
So moved.
Second,
I'll second.
those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carried. Discussion and action calendar. We are starting with 7C, which is the fourth quarter ending June 30, 2024 financial report. This is unaudited and preliminary. Director of Finance, Ann Roman, please.
Thank you. Good evening. I have a presentation tonight for my right button. There we go. All right. So I usually don't prepare a presentation for these, but I did today because I thought we might, with a long meeting ahead of us, we want to keep it a little high level. So I'll take any questions that come up along the way, of course. So this is the fourth fiscal quarter, and it is also the fiscal year ending 6/30/2024. This is on unaudited and preliminary. Our final information will come to us through the audited financial statements, which we anticipate to have ready in November this year, a little bit earlier since our audit fell a little earlier this year. All right. So here's that error correction that I mentioned earlier with the CalPERS additional discretionary payment. I just wanted to be fully transparent about that. Again, correct amount was budgeted and paid, just a couple of typos on the slides. So then I will start with an overview here of this. And as we get to the more specific pages, I'll have page numbers on these slides so that you can follow along. All right, so overview at 6/30, cash has increased by 1,375,317 in the quarter. Meter sales are down compared to the prior year, but higher percentage in the wastewater area. And I'll have more historical information forthcoming during the capacity report in October that I'll be bringing. The investment interest that we earned this fiscal year was 740,000 approximately, and that was a record high for the district. The budget versus actual expenses are at 82% of budget at fiscal year end. So we're well below budget. Preliminary results are 5,039,671 in net revenues to be used for capital costs, depreciation, and funding reserves. And an accounts receivable report has been added to this quarterly report that I'll be doing. All right.
I have a question.
Oh, yeah.
I have a question. So regarding the water consumption at the bottom, it's maybe it wasn't on yours, but on page 22, is that you were referring to stuff on page 22 in our packet?
Mhm.
And it talks about water conservation?
Yeah.
But it says it continues to reflect conservation, which to me kind of reads like, we're doing a good job. JBWD is doing a good job on our conservation messaging.
Yeah.
Because I've heard that explained to me in the past. Oh, well, that means because conservation. But if 1 in 3 houses is an Airbnb and it's empty, they're empty for most of the time. Wouldn't that be contributing to the less, consumption and it not be, conservation?
Certainly. I mean, there could be multiple reasons why the consumption is down. It can be weather related, conservation related, but what we're seeing is that it actually went up in this quarter slightly, about 0.6%, but it's pretty stable compared to where it's been, where it was last year. However, from 2013, it's down 33%. So we have to make some assumptions in there as to the reason for this, and we generally attribute that to conservation, but there could be a multitude of reasons why those consumption figures have.
So I guess my question is that, is that being authentic or something to the ratepayer to say it's always conservation when it could be these other things, and it's likely that, the Airbnb business, how it took off, could be contributing, because, the business fell apart in 2023.
Yeah.
And we can see on page 37, this historical use, you can see how the water rates are really down there. And, because, I walk around in my neighborhood and there's 20 Airbnbs and they're empty all the time.
Yep.
My neighborhood's decimated. And so nobody's drinking water there. And so I just think it's incorrect to say it's conservation.
Well, it could be a reduction in consumption for multiple reasons. So yes, we could phrase it as a reduction in consumption instead of conservation. But this downward trend really all started when the conservation mandates came into play. So that seems to indicate that conservation was the trigger. And then when COVID hit in 2020, the consumption went up for a few years. And that, I believe, is because a lot of folks were working from home. A lot of folks came into the area, and it seemed like
To rent out Airbnbs.
well, and that's part of it too, but we'd have to do a little more analysis to see what the Airbnb component of all this really is. But yeah, I agree. I mean, we could rephrase that and say that it's a reduction in consumption for multiple reasons, and hard to ever know exactly what that is.
Well, not to belabor the point or anything, Ann, and I appreciate you being willing to, maybe rephrase that. But if you look, I know, and I'm jumping ahead, but it just seemed to be part of that note. If you look at, like, again, on page 37, if you look at 2022 and then we go to 2023. So 2022 was 524,978. And then the next year it's 458,937. That just seems like such a huge jump downward. And yet when COVID began, it was 466,282. So that's when people were staying at home and
Yeah.
stuff. And so it goes down there. So anyway, it just looks like, it's such a.
There's also in those years where it was up there in 21 and 22. There's also, this may be a factor as well. I think there are just numerous factors, some of which we aren't even aware of, but in those years, we also found that because of the moratorium on shutoffs and on cutoffs, that perhaps people were using more and, not having to be concerned about paying for that consumption. So I think that could have been a factor in those years as well. That's my opinion, but
I think you make a good point. I think there's multi-factors in here, and you can see from the 2015 through 2019, so before the Airbnb and before COVID, that there was a downward trend from conservation mandate and messaging. So we want to make an assumption that that is still also impacting the downward trend along with some of the other factors.
Okay, thank you.
all right. So let's move on to total cash. This aligns with page 25 of your packet. Total cash is at 20,226,607. The legally restricted portion is at 5,213,454, or designated at 14,641,690, and unrestricted 371,463. That was an increase to cash in the quarter of 1,375,317, and increase since the prior year of 2,563,279. Any questions there before I move on?
Yes, I have a question. Thank you, Anne. So increase from last year, so it's an increase of 2.5 million, right? That just seems like a lot.
It does.
Yeah, and
It
so
does.
why was that such a large increase? What's our supposition about that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm doing additional research and analysis because I am thinking that is quite a bit, and actually our net revenues are quite high. And that is something that I want to compare with the rate study to see how that aligns. I'm looking at the budgets. I've also been looking at, we actually ended up this year very much under budget. So it just, what it means is we're not spending the money as quickly as it's coming in. So that's, that could be for a number of reasons too. But I'll be doing more analysis on that high amount, especially the net revenues. I'm particularly, I don't want to say concerned, but interested in because they are quite high.
All from me on that. Thank you.
All right. And we'll move on to source and use of funds, and this aligns with page 26 of your packet. I wanted to cover here the primary source of funds. Majority here, water bill payments, $1,775,185. Property taxes and assessments at $686,863. Meter install and capacity charges, $196,674, and late interest of $192,262. Primary use of funds in this quarter were operations, salary, and benefits. Capital costs were only $82,700 in this quarter. So I think that is pretty low, and one of the reasons of that, perhaps cash is going up. The one reservoir upgrade, $42,250, well, 14 MIOPS, $18,954, and Belmont Design and Survey, $15,960. And just, when there is not as much in the capital costs area, we have to look at what, else is happening. And one of the projects, the big projects that has been going on was the LCRR project, the inventorying for that. So the lead and service copper line project. So, I anticipate that what was happening is they were spending a lot more time on that project than on the capital projects in this particular quarter. Any questions on this slide, page 26 of the packet?
I have a curious, do you have something, Jane?
Oh, yeah, just kind of, because we were just talking about how the, excuse me, I had to chew a little gum because I had a tickle going on. We were just talking about the increase. And it would be interesting to see the comparison, like, to your major sources. What was the last quarter or the last, whatever this is reflecting. This is just one quarter, right?
This is just one quarter.
Yeah, so maybe the last fourth quarter of last year or something.
Yeah, to look at.
To see, maybe it's the property taxes that are more, or,
There is,
there
is actually, we have been receiving more in property taxes each year. However, it's not that significant. I want to say maybe 100,000.
Yeah, and I think the interest has gone up too,
The interest has gone up significantly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's,
And
so it'd be kind of interesting to see that when we talk about the fact that there's a big difference between these two numbers.
right, yeah, more historical analysis.
Yeah.
On the quarters. Yeah, I agree.
So, you're done, Jane?
Yeah.
I'm looking at on 26, I'm looking at property tax assessment, 686,000. How frequently does the county provide us with that?
I want to say probably in maybe 8 to 10
About
installments?
10, yeah.
About 10? Yeah,
10 payments.
yeah, over the year.
So in other words, the bulge that we're getting in our revenue isn't the direct result of all of a sudden the $686,000 came in.
Well, this is the large second payment. This quarter would have been when the large second payment of property tax did hit, because those are due in April.
Mhm.
And so we get a large payment right after that, and that did fall in this quarter. We get smaller payments as people pay late, so we get additional installments on that. But yeah, it is the quarter that we have high intake of property taxes.
So that could be one of the reasons why we have such a bulge in the revenue.
In this quarter,
600,000.
in this quarter. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. I'll move on to accounts receivable. This is our new report. And this is a comparison between the fiscal year ending 6/30/24 and 6/30/23. AR balance, the accounts receivable balance, is actually only 4% higher at 6/30/24 than it was in the prior year, while the total bills issued increased by 9%. So that's good. It means that the AR balance is not going up as quickly as the bills are increasing. AR increases were approximately 25% in the COVID/moratorium years. So we're at 4% versus 25% in several of the prior years. The days bills outstanding, so the number of days that it takes for customers to pay their bills has decreased from 58.1 to 54.6, from 6/30/23 to 6/30/24. So that means customers are paying a little bit faster. And liens receivable balance remains very similar between both years at this point. And the reason I'm including this accounts receivable report is I really want to be more transparent about the status of accounts receivable so that we don't bring any surprises like we did last year with the bad debt, perhaps. Maybe that wasn't as obvious what was happening with the accounts receivable. So I wanted to include that. Any questions? This aligns with page 27 of your packet.
Director Doolittle has a question. So AR balance is only 4% higher. So what do you mean? What is 4% higher? Higher? What does that mean? That we only have, I don't know what 4% higher is.
Sure. What I mean by that is that our total bills, the total value or the total dollar amount of our bills that we issued increased by 9% between the 2 years. However, the accounts receivable balance, so what customers owe, has only increased by 4%. So what we're not gaining any accounts receivable balances where the accounts receivable is going up more slowly than the bill value is.
Okay, so.
Does that make sense?
Okay, so the accounts receivable balance is, so it was, let's say it was 24 last year and now, or last fiscal year, or whenever this report, and now it's only 28. Is that what that 4% would be, for example?
So I can give you the actual numbers. The average accounts receivable in 22-23 was $1,064,276. In 23-24, it went up to $1,104,722. But that was only a 4% increase versus the overall billing increase, which was 9%. It increased from $6,685,000 to $7,376,000. And let's see, I don't have that. Oh, yeah, I do have that in
Page 27.
yeah, on
Yeah.
page 27. At the very bottom,
Mhm.
the left and right boxes there. You have the total bills issued, the total dollar amount of the bills issued. And the accounts receivable balance that is in the left and right boxes at the top, the $1,251,000, and that includes the bad debt also that has to be reduced from that, but that increase between the box on the left and the box on the right was only 4%, while the increase between the box on the left and the right for the bottom, the bills issued was 9%.
Yeah, I want to thank our Director of Finance for the information on the late charges applied, et cetera, because I don't remember ever seeing those before. So thank you.
Yeah, that's all new information.
Great, that's great.
Does the 9% correlate to the increase, the rate increase?
Somewhat,
Mm.
because it's gonna fluctuate depending on consumption but yes, it's in that neighborhood.
Okay.
Yeah. So let me then, if there are no other questions on that, okay. I will move on to property taxes and assessments, and here I have a table for you, but it's also in your packet on page 28. Property taxes allocated by the county. We have no say in how much we get. They send us a schedule every year and tell us how much we're going to get. CMM Assessment District, we are seeing that current collections are similar to the prior year, which is good. That's stable. And standby assessments, the current collections are slightly down from the prior year, down by looks like down by 2%. Sorry. So in the table, I'll just note the total there. You can see the breakdown though of the general district property taxes, CMM and standby. I've included the prior amounts as well, which that confuses it a little bit because we do track the prior versus the current. So prior is anything that was from a prior fiscal year that was unpaid. And those are usually paid when properties transfer and those property taxes have to be brought up to speed. But we track those separately. And for the current, we were at 87% on CMM and 89% for standby assessments. General district property taxes, we were at 102% on that. So that's good. That's just probably a slight budgeting discrepancy there. Overall, 94% of current is what we collected and 102% if we factor in the prior collections as well.
Oh, okay.
Questions on that page? So this one, it's a little small. I apologize for that, but I had to bring these in from some other reports. And so I will just read this to you. Budget adjustment. We had in this quarter one budget adjustment that we made, and this was related to a project that was actually the building refresh project that we had started, but wasn't, we had already committed to that project. And the budget needed to be rolled forward from 23-24 to 24-25. So we're not increasing the budget. We're just moving it from one fiscal year to the other. And this is actually permissible under the budget policy that we do this. It's a cross-year policy that we make an exception if there's a contract that's been executed and that the district is committed to this expenditure and we have not rebudgeted it for some reason. This happens, I don't want to say a lot, but it can happen. It tends to happen because we don't know exactly where those costs are going to land in this fiscal year or the next fiscal year. It's hard to predict that sometimes, so it does happen.
Which is why we have a Tilford 1 and a Tilford 2. It's because of that.
One of the reasons, yeah. Yeah. Any other questions on that page? Oh, then we have our budget versus actual, which is also known as our operating board report. This corresponds with pages 30 to 35 of your packet. And I have the summary on your page 30, but I'll just read some of the statistics here. Water revenues were at 99% of budget. Now this is using the revised budget. So these were adjusted down a little bit as we went through the budget process. Total revenues are at 111% of budget, and those tend to be that way because of the capacity fees that are unbudgeted. So in the expense area, all departments are at 88% of budget or less, except for, I just wanted to point out these that were more than 88%. So bonds, loans, and standbys, that department was at 98%, and that's due to very predictable loan repayments, so we can budget very accurately there. CIRP was at 143%, and that reflects more expense project work than budgeted capital projects. And the HDMC treatment plant at 100%, so that is pretty routine, assuming nothing out of the ordinary happens there. Expenses were at $1,559,961 under budget, and although $2,275,000 in net revenues was budgeted, to fund reserves, capital costs, and depreciation, we actually saw $5,039,671 in actual net revenues in the preliminary report. So this is higher than expected. This is what I mentioned earlier, higher than expected, and definitely doing an additional analysis on this in comparison with the rate study. Just want to make sure that everything looks in order there. It is higher than expected. So also just a little factoid here, 12-month average check register costs are at $568,000. Any questions on those pages? We certainly have all the detail here for you if you'd like to discuss any of those items. Pages 31 through 34.
I have a kind of a question. On the slide, you have expenses were 1.5 or 1.6 million, but it's not reflected at all on page 30. Yeah, where should it be on page 30?
On page 30, so that's the difference between the total expenses line, the $8,482,000, and the $6,922,000 in actual there. And you'll see it on page, page 34 also. If you look at the bottom there, third row from the bottom with a variable, favorable, unfavorable column.
Page?
Page 34.
Oh,
Yeah, if you start from the bottom right and you just look in that second to the most right column, the $1,559,000 is there as the variance between the current budget and the fiscal activity on that report.
yeah, and I guess I still don't see where it fits into this revenues and expenses page.
On this summary,
On the page 30.
on page 30, it would probably go, if I had it there, it would go where the 82% is.
Yeah, that's what I was
We
thinking.
have the 82%, yeah. And I would just have to move that over.
Well, I'm gonna write it in just to remember.
Write it in.
Yeah, so $1,559,000 under budget. And I did do some additional analysis on that. And, because this is pretty well under budget this year.
Yeah.
And, that's a good thing, but I want to make sure that it makes sense. And so did some additional analysis today. And one of the big factors in there is going to be salaries, because we did have quite a few open positions that were budgeted that were not filled during this calendar or this fiscal year, excuse me.
We're not filled for the full year.
Were not filled for the full year.
Right.
Yeah, so we had quite a difference in there alone, as well as other areas, of course. Any other questions on the budget versus actual? So here's the detail. I won't go over that. You certainly may ask questions about that if you have any. 82% overall. All right, moving on to water sales statistics. This corresponds with pages 36 and 37 of your packet. Water sales are up slightly, 0.6% from 458,000 units at 6/30/23 to 461,000 units at 6/30/24. Down 63,292 units or 12.58% from 6/30/22. So we saw quite a drop from 22 to 24. Historical water sales are down 33.19% from 2013. And then we have our top 10 consumers, and I confirmed that these also are top 10 revenue generators for the quarter. And we had our usual customers on this list, but I will mention here too, we want to keep in mind that some of these accounts that are listed do include multiple accounts. For example, the High Desert Medical Center, it includes the hospital and the continuing care center. Some of these accounts also have multiple living units, as has been pointed out from time to time in the past, that we have apartments among these. And so there are multiple units and multiple households. And David has some statistics for that if you're interested.
Just because I was curious. Oh, go ahead.
I just want to make a point. I believe Evoke Modern LLC is also AutoCamp. I mean, they've been switching, well, they've been switching their names around. I looked this up and also the one that has the motel at the west end of
Field trip. That's field
field
trip.
field trip. Yeah, but they're all kind of related. Look them up.
Company,
Huh?
same parent.
Well, I don't know. It's kind of confusing.
There's an LLC. So they might.
Yeah, but
so-
AutoCamp used to be on this list and it's not.
It's not.
Yeah, not for this quarter.
Not this quarter.
They could reach out.
Right.
So just because I was curious and it tends to come up kind of sporadically. So Quail Springs Village Apartments, all of their units are between 875 and 975 square feet. They have 75 housing units there. They're all one story. So if we take the 2,504 units in 3 months, divide that into 1 month, that's 834 units. That's 11 units or about 8,324 gallons per household, per housing unit per month. And that apartment complex does have irrigation, pool and a spa. So my estimation is that it's about 5 or 6 units per housing unit per month. The William Pyle entry there, that is Joshua Mobile Estates. I could not find the number of units, housing units that are for that specific one on the internet. So I don't have statistics for that. Lazy H Mobile Home Park, they have 61 units. So that averages out to 3.8 units per housing unit per month or 2,900 gallons. Excuse me.
How much per month?
3.8 units
Oh.
per housing unit.
Yeah.
per month.
Okay,
And these are, pretty rough. It's hard to say.
those are mobile
One is
homes.
gonna be, yeah.
Yeah.
And the Yucca Trail apartments, those are between 588 and 760 square feet. There's 50 units at that apartment complex. Those 690 units in 3 months, 230 in 1 month. Comes out to about 4.6 units or 3,400 gallons per housing unit per month. So it's relatively low per household.
Thank you.
And then we talked a little bit about the historical water sales on page 37 earlier, so I don't know if there are other comments or questions about that. All right, well, that is it. Any other questions overall? I'll certainly bring back any new information that I may discover as I delve more deeply into this.
It's not a question, it's an observation. I did the math on this Evoque Modern and they're doing 700 gallons a day. I divided 8 into 671 and then it's a quarter.
It's a quarter.
3, so it's 28 units a month, which is roughly 700 gallons a day for the STRs of Evoque Modern, which I have one 800 feet to myself east.
Thank you.
When is the audit happening?
So the audit was actually last week. Well,
Oh,
we have a spring visit, we have a fall visit. So we had the fall visit last week. They were out last week. And they're currently preparing the final trial balance, and then we'll start to work on the financial statements. We'll be reviewing those and going back and forth on that. We'll present those. We plan to present those to the finance committee and the board in November this year.
thank you.
Welcome.
We'll do this anyway. Question and comments, comments from the board, Vice President Doolittle,
Not for me, thank you.
Director Fick,
Nothing.
Charlesburg.
Thank you, no?
No questions. Nothing from our citizen advisory chair, David, either. Nodded in the negative. Just an observation. Sometimes we forget about this plaque thing we have on the wall about our vision, mission, and values. And right at the bottom of the values, it talks about how we embrace these important values. And during Ann Roman's presentation, she used the term transparency 2 times to make corrections of technical stuff and all of that. And transparency is one of our most important values. They are integrity, transparency, respect, financial responsibility, and accountability. And so I applaud your effort to be specific, to be accurate, to be fair about these things. And my compliments again to the general manager for creating an environment where you feel comfortable doing that with the board and you too watching.
Thank you.
Do we have any other public comments from anyone? Our attorney has joined us, by the way. Nobody's seen that. Thank you for that.
Hello.
Is there a motion to approve the 4th fiscal quarter ending June 30 financial report?
A motion.
Thank you, David.
I'll second.
And we have a second. General Manager Johnson, a roll call, please.
President Fleming,
Aye.
Vice President Doolittle.
Yes.
Director Fick,
Yes.
Director Charlesburg,
Yes.
Director Short.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Motion carried. Can we go to the top now? Is that what we should do? And I find it.
Pass these down.
Okay, now we're doing the item 7A, I should say that this time. Review of draft strategic plan. General Manager Johnson, introduction, please.
Thank you.
Pass it down.
This has been a fun project so far, and tonight we have Tim Worley here in person, Susan Ellen on Zoom. And we're going to go over the draft strategic plan that we've all been working hard on. Welcome, Tim, and Mike is up there for you. I think you should.
Thank you. Can you hear me? How's it?
That's better. Yeah.
Excuse me. I do have a presentation and I don't know if you have a clicker for me to advance or well, Lisa, will you?
Oh,
advance the class? Okay. Well, it's a great pleasure to see all of you again. I want to make sure you realize that my colleague Susan Allen is also joining us remotely. She couldn't be here with us tonight, but we worked as a team on this and are pleased to be here to present a draft. This is a complete draft based on our findings and our input, really. So we are with Ortega Strategies Group, and I'll be giving you this presentation and another one on a totally different, but I guess related topic related to Chrome 6 a little bit later. But at this step, the focus is really on content. You'll see that this is just a plain vanilla black and white copy of the content. So that's really what I want to focus your attention on. And we want to get your feedback. If you have feedback tonight, that's great, but we do have some time and we would encourage you to read through it carefully, provide comments back to us.
Possibly, the general manager can coordinate that, all of those for you. So on the second, slide, we believe that the strategic plan should begin with a kind of an introduction, setting a tone for the readers. And we think this could be achieved very nicely with this kind of letter from the board and the staff leaders that really expresses some of the hopes and aspirations of the district. The letter draws heavily on what we heard in the interviews and in the workshop that we had with you all last month.
Hey, Tim,
Yes, Susan.
can I ask Sarah, would you like me to email Jeff a copy of the full draft so he can see the detail as we go through?
Do you have his email?
I don't. Can someone email it to me maybe?
I will get it to you. Thank you.
Thank you. Uh-huh.
Good catch. Didn't think about that. So with respect to the vision, mission, and values, it's good that you referred to those, have them posted prominently. We heard at the outset that generally everyone is pretty satisfied and pleased with these statements, except for one small edit to the value of fiscal responsibility. These were left unchanged. But in the document, you will notice that we added a possible sixth value based on discussions with you all, and that is the value of leadership. We didn't put it on the slide because we don't know for sure if that resonates with you, but we certainly heard a lot about that, and it seemed to us that that may be a sixth value that you hold as a district. So that's one thing that we would appreciate your comments on.
Hey,
Because
Tim. Oh, sorry.
we will want to decide if that is something to add to the, to your vision statement or not. Susan?
Tim, can I just say one thing backing up to the letter? Knowing that you only had 2 seconds to look at all this, the intention of the letter is really to have your board chair and general manager introduce the district, introduce where you've been and where you're going, and kind of articulate in broad strokes the essence of your plan and some of your key strategic priorities and challenges. And so if the letter doesn't do that, let us know. But I just wanted to let you know what the intention was, is sort of framing the picture of the plan and your district and where it's headed.
So again, back to the values, we appreciate and we expect to get your comments to some extent on several things about this draft document. So, and by the way, if you have comments as we go, feel free to interject.
On this letter, it's a cover letter, right? I mean, that's what it's meant to be, a cover letter for the report. Because I wasn't quite clear what it was. Does it go out to the
It would-
newspaper? Or
No.
I
We
mean,
would have it be like the intro page to the strategic plan.
Okay,
It's really an introduction to your district.
Okay.
Let's sort of deformalize this a little bit and make it a little bit more of a discussion,
okay.
so that we don't have to go back and look for pages or something from when things is fresh in everybody's memory. So therefore, Vice President Doolittle has a question.
Sure.
So this leadership, what do we mean by leadership there? It's too broad, I think, for us all to be able to contribute,
Yes, Stacy, what we were hearing from you throughout the session, throughout the workshop and in our interviews, is that you want, as a district, to be a leader in the industry. You want to be a leader in the community. You want to, you want to be a leader in the region. And there's no place that is explicit in the things that you have already as your your vision and mission.
Director, on this, Manager Johnson.
I personally like this. I heard this a lot during the workshop as well, and I did send to Tim and Susan for consideration a statement that would go behind that. And if I read that, then maybe that will help understand what this means, at least to me at this point. Leadership at JBWD is rooted in integrity, respect, and collaboration, driving positive change and setting the standard of excellence in the community we serve. So that, we are looked at as leaders in our community for all those that we serve. Although that could be edited, but that's, were my initial thoughts.
And that's not a decide today kind of a thing. You can
Yeah.
sleep on it and let us know.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I heard that throughout our discussion also, and I really do appreciate you adding it. It means leadership in terms of the district, not necessarily the board members being leader out in the community or stuff like that.
Right.
It's really
Well, I think-
setting a good example in the community of being a leader
All of us.
of the district.
Correct. That's how we heard it.
Okay, so I see here's some positive feedback on that, and we can wordsmith the general manager's draft, or, so then if you have comments or suggestions on that, please feel free to weigh in. On the next plan, or the next slide rather, we'll I have animated some of these, so we'll go through them as we go, but kind of as a reminder of the process, where we are. We interviewed and surveyed 16 people, I believe it was 16, to get your sense of the current situation in several key areas. And then from this sort of raw data, we drew out some of the SWOT, the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, and organized those into 5 main areas. The workshop that we were just discussing added a lot more detail and shaped those themes in really important ways. So especially looking ahead for ways to use your strengths to capitalize potentially on opportunities, and ways to mitigate any weaknesses so that you can hold off those threats that are out there or account for them. So from the workshop, we organize your priorities and strategies into the draft plan that you have just received. When the plan is adopted, it really sets your strategic direction for several years. And at the same time, it's not something that you just put on the shelf. This is an action orientation for the district. It really sets your direction and what you plan to do. So then the plan really becomes operational by you already adopt an annual budget, obviously, and at the same time, as you're planning your budget for the year, we believe that the management team can align that with their action plan for the district, so that you have these 2 documents that really show how you're going to move forward for that year. Of course, we want to make clear that there are many ongoing routine kinds of activities that may not appear in the strategic plan, and those will appear in your budget and potentially in the annual plan. But also those strategic actions for that year would need to become a part of that business plan or work plan for the year. And I'll come back to that, but each item in the work plan would also have its own metric, kind of like telling us, okay, at the end of the year, did we accomplish this or not? And there may be things that arise during the year that you have to change. Things come up, and so it may not, you don't have a perfect crystal ball, but if you get periodic reports, say quarterly, you can understand why something may get done or not get finished that year. So it sounds like this idea is a little bit different from how the general manager has laid out her work for the staff's work for the year, but we think this is a good addition for you. So now we can go through the strategic priorities and objectives of the draft plan. So I just want to make a couple of quick comments before we dive into the 5 strategic priority areas. First of all, I'm not going to go through every bullet point that's listed for those. I'll just really focus on the higher level objectives, but those are in the draft text, and so they provide a lot more direction. Kind of on a related point that I just mentioned, those don't always capture that ongoing work of the staff. Some routine things are not going to show up in your strategic plan because that's more strategic rather than routine. It's just a slight difference, but an important one that you might want to keep in mind. So as we get into the first strategic priority, water supply and quality, you'll notice that with each of these, we have suggested a sort of a concise statement of your intention. Here that statement, if you want to move forward, that statement is Joshua Basin, they all start the same. Joshua Basin Water District aspires to ensure a resilient and sustainable water supply. So
Hey,
you might
Tim,
also.
can I just make a point that in your draft, you'll see sometimes there might be more than one. And we would like you to tell us which one fits best, or if there's some alternative version you might like.
Okay, I was just going to say that.
Oh, sorry.
Wait, that's okay. We didn't practice this. That's an important point. Yeah, you'll see different versions of that. We put in the presentation tonight, the one we think you might find fits the best, but so we can get more feedback on that. So this has 3 strategic objectives in this area. The first is plan for a sufficient long-term water supply to meet current and future customers' needs. And then the second is implement cost-effective solutions to water quality challenges. And then the third is preserve water quality of critical groundwater sources.
I got a question on that one. On the first bullet point on there, it just says monitor the nitrate levels in the groundwater. Is there a way we could change the wording on that to include more? Because if it just says nitrates, it could make it sound like that's all we're looking at.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, where is that?
Oh, 1.3.
Oh, okay, 1.3. Oh, okay, right.
And
okay.
what, do you have alternate language you want to recommend that we capture right now, or do you want to give it to us later?
I would say just any contaminant.
Or
Okay,
constituent, I think is the terminology.
Better.
What is it?
Constituent.
Constituents?
That's perfect. That's a great comment.
Okay.
It might have been that nitrate was called out because of the potential wastewater issue.
Yeah.
That they're concerned down the road.
Well, I'm gonna go back up to the number 1. Water is the heart of our mission. I'm not sure heart is the word. I put down blood just because it runs. But I mean, heart somehow doesn't resonate.
Sure.
So I'd like to think it through.
Well, and.
I kind of know what you're saying, but
And what the idea is to select one of those
yeah.
3 statements, not have all of them. And we were trying to be a little bit creative with some of those, just give it something.
Yeah, that's my
happy,
first reaction, so.
But I think that one probably didn't quite hit the mark, so.
And then in the bottom of the first paragraph of their above objective 1.1, you say, we want to build trust and confidence in consistently delivering high quality, safe water. I'm not sure safe is the right word either. I don't even know what safe water is, I mean, yeah, I don't want to drown in it, I want to be safe in it, but I don't know what safe water is.
Well,
I mean, anyway, it's another nitty picky thing.
Yeah, well, we're imagining that we actually want you to knit and pick and make sure
That's
this
what I
is really
imagined,
right. And
yeah.
come up with, you know what, that doesn't feel right, but here's some other ideas, or here's what's missing, or here's what, you know, we think you captured, but it's not exactly quite right. So this is intended for you to knit and pick. And
So-
take time to do it in the next, you know, however long Sarah gives you.
How,
And Tom.
how would be the best way to get the nitpicks?
The feedback, yeah.
Feedback,
No.
to you, would they handwritten and we scan them all to you or?
Whatever you
But-
want to do is fine. We can give people
Okay.
Word versions of this and they can do their own edits and forward them. They can send them to you. They can write us notes, whatever works for you, we can deal with it.
Yeah, I'd like an online version that I can maybe put purple, you know, added or in strikeouts and stuff, so.
Sure.
Once I mess this up, then I don't know how you transfer it, you know.
Well, we'll make sure that you get a Word version.
Yeah.
That you can put track changes or just, you know, and whatever works for you.
It's looking good, though, I'm actually.
Vice President Doolittle.
So in these objectives here, it looks to me in this water supply and quality, that this is where climate change should be addressed in here, because we're kind of alluding to it when we're saying, you know, in several areas. So,
Yeah,
but we're not really stating it. And I think the idea of resiliency related, you know, we say sustainability and you said resiliency somewhere else, but you know, preserve water quality of critical groundwater resources. I'm not sure if it should probably be in 1.2. But this, to me, this is an example, you guys, of what's going to happen after we send the comments. Then is there going to be another board process where we look at them all together? Or is it going to be, you know, you guys just taking what we as individuals say and we don't make decisions as a board on them?
We need to see it after it's all built.
So that's why I'm asking about
I
the
guess
time.
that's kind of up to you, Stacy, to give us direction about that.
a
And what you would,
second draft.
what you would
Second
prefer.
shot.
Yes.
And just to let you know, we put most of the sustainability in a different section of the plan. So that might be something to have a board conversation about. Once you see the whole thing, do you
Yes.
feel like it adequately gets addressed where we put it? Or do we want to weave it through other sections or move it to this section? So that would be something for you all to give us guidance on.
Okay, and I'm a pretty fast reader and I did scan through it before I asked that question. So anyway,
Okay.
but yeah, let's onward.
Okay.
Well, thank you. Those are all good comments. I will try to keep track of some things that we've done. I'm sure Susan is.
I've got it for sure. Yeah.
So on the second major priority area, finance and affordability. The statement is Joshua Basin Water District aspires to keep water affordable while staying financially strong. We did organize your input into 3 objectives for this one. The first is assess revenue requirements and update financial plans for establishing appropriate water rates and supplemental funding opportunities. This is something that seems somewhat routine that water districts do this. Anytime you need to evaluate your rates and your revenues, but also, there may be a few other things that are kind of included in this that have to do with affordability, which I think we heard there is concern about, and equity. You have an interesting situation where you have permanent full-time residents, and you also have the short-term rentals that you were talking about. So that's something just kind of flagged there. The first objective is that, and then the second one is manage financial reserves consistent with policies for security, acceptable risk, and income objectives. Now, again, this is something that I think you do, but we also heard that there may be an interest in evaluating the return on your investments and, you know, that sort of thing. So there may be a specific action item that comes out of this within this 5-year timeline of the plan. And then finally, the third objective is continually seek efficiency in managing physical assets and resources. And that has several additional bullets associated with that. I'll pause just in case I see a comment. And if not, we can go on to the third strategic priority, facilities infrastructure, and this is where we also included environmental stewardship. The goal statement reads Joshua Bates Water District aspires to maintain reliable, sustainable facilities. So facilities may not capture everything that you want to include under, you know, under this strategic priority. But in any case, we have 4 distinct objectives here. The first is review and update the CIRP appropriate for the physical infrastructure's life cycle. The comment on that is that we included the term life cycle because it seemed as though the replacement, the pace of replacement may not match the life cycle of the assets. So if you're keeping up with, you know, with the replacement schedule that you need, that's great. But if you're falling behind, you may need to make some adjustment there. The second one is construct and operate facilities and equipment to meet compliance with all state and federal regulations. The third is provide work facilities conducive to employee engagement, collaboration, harmony, productivity, and well-being. In other words, take care of your people with the facilities they need. And then fourth, implement financially efficient and environmentally beneficial strategies for productive use of district facilities. So I'll pause and see if any of those are the bullet points from the initial comments. On the next priority area, people and culture. The goal statement reads, Joshua Basin Water District aspires to remain committed to a collaborative and innovative future.
Just before people and culture, I just want to, in case people didn't turn the page over, number 3, that's actually talking about the climate change and environmental.
Yeah, I'll admit that I missed that.
But I still think, you know, Stacy, if you think we need to either broaden it or move it, let us know. But we thought most of what we talked about was linked to your facilities and your garden and your ground, you know, those things, and it would be a place to start with.
Yeah, it just happened to be on the back of the page, but it also mentions solar, which we're happy for that too.
Good. I'm glad you pointed that out. Thank you. So 2 objectives with regard to this strategic priority area. The first is cultivate organizational culture that successfully recruits, retains, trains, and develops effective leaders and team members. And then secondly, review and update policies and implement process improvements and technology solutions to maximize effectiveness. So again, these objectives that I'm reading through are a bit higher level, but please do read through all the bullet points to see some of the more specific actions and direction that come from these.
Hey, Tim, can I just make one point about this one? There is probably the only bullet that's directly related to the board is in this section.
Yeah.
And we toyed with whether the board bullet should be its own bullet. But that would be one of particular interest. Does that capture the set of things that we talked about needing to address in investing in the board to make sure you can be successful?
Thank you. And then, so finally, if we're ready to move on to the fifth one, external relations and influence. The intent is here is stated as Joshua Basin Water District aspires to strengthen relationships that shape our community's future. And then there are three strategic objectives under this goal. The first is enhance customer trust, understanding, and positive perception of the district's work protecting and providing water services. The second is develop mutually beneficial relationships, expand collaboration, and exercise strategic leadership with local, regional, state, and federal partners to meet challenges and opportunities. And thirdly, develop a district position on development and exercise on development. Okay, I got the inflection wrong. Let me start over.
Yeah.
Develop a district position on development and exercise leadership in shaping Joshua Tree's future.
I think when I review this again, I need a thesaurus next to me. There are other words
Sorry.
here that are overused, that maybe we could find another word that, you know, is a little more. I like thesauruses, actually.
Which word is tripping us up?
Well, I'm just noticing develop and then development in the same sentence, you know.
Yeah,
that might be-
gotcha. Okay, don't
Yeah.
be repetitive. Got it.
Might be on land use planning or.
Yeah, I think there might be some other words, and I'm, you know, I had cultivate culture. I mean, I don't know.
I know we may not be done with comments, but I just want to thank you guys. You guys did a really good job on this.
Yeah.
So thank you very much for getting us to this point
Definitely.
and as quickly as you did. Thank you.
Well, we appreciate and have enjoyed working with you. And like you said, we want the nit and the pick. So tell us what we missed and what we got wrong.
Yeah, so just to kind of wrap it up, in fact, on the next slide, we have sort of what the next steps are. This is where we are. We want you, the board and management, to review this. You're seeing it for the first time, provide your comments back to us in any of those ways that work. And then secondly, we will be working even before we get all of your comments, perhaps on the framework of a design, because we don't expect massive changes. We think we can do, you know, get the design underway and save a little bit of time there, get it more or less ready for publication. Then ultimately, it will come back to your board for approval. If there's one final round, one final iteration of comments and tweaks to the language, we can certainly do that. Because it is your plan, you need to have it the way, you know, the way you want it. And then finally, we did anticipate that would probably happen in October, maybe at your second meeting of the month. So that's kind of our hope. And then as you go into the next fiscal year and begin the budgeting process, we would see a 2025-26 work plan or business plan, you can call it whichever way you want, would be developed at the same time. And we have given Sarah a model for that. Certainly doesn't have to follow that exactly. It's just an example, but you can kind of make it your own and see what will work for you. And actually, that it may evolve over time as we make adjustments to it. But that annual work plan is where the rubber hits the road for the strategic plan. And you have to find that balance of what your resources can take on for that year and what is the right sequence for some of the strategic priorities that you have as a district.
So I just like to suggest, and I don't know if this is a motion or anything, but I heard someone else say it, that, we need to have another review of this at a workshop. And so I would like to move or request that it be at a workshop and not a board meeting when we're covering other things. And it's hard to dig in on some of this because it's a lot of wordsmithing on some of the things. I don't want us to spend forever on this, but I was just thinking between review and design, we really need to have that time.
So, let me get clarification. Are you thinking that, well, so the first we send all the comments in, this is what I was first thinking, and then Tim and Susan will synthesize all of those comments, and then at that point is what you would want a workshop? That's an option, a workshop. The other option could be an ad hoc that looks at it. But it's really ultimately up to you. I just wanted to point that out, that is an option.
Oh.
And that's something that's being requested a lot.
And I guess that's a good point of whether you would want us just to synthesize the comments and not try to act on them and let you decide which one, decide how you want to, like, let us collect and coordinate what you tell us, but then let you decide between competing perspectives, how you ultimately want to land.
Director Short, you have.
Oh, no, that cleared it up.
So we would look at those competing ideas or whatever between the review and the design. Is that what you're saying?
Well, I think what I think we can do is do it in parallel, because I doubt that whatever we change is going to add 10 more pages, So we can have we can have a general framework of what it's going to look and feel like. And I know Director Short had particular preferences of, I remember you telling me, you don't like big pages wasted by pictures, and there's certain reports that you had looked at that you thought were particularly nice. So any of the rest of you that, have taken a peek at other plans and have something that you like the look and feel that you'd like to share, we'd be welcome. We'd happy to see that. But I already know some of the ones that Director Short likes and have checked them out.
I just don't feel like my question was answered right there, because so what I'm saying, and what I thought some of the other board members were suggesting is that, okay, you guys would take our comments. We can certainly do that remotely, and do that online. But then you would synthesize them and integrate them. The discussion of that synthesis and integration, I believe, it would be too lengthy to do in a board meeting, but maybe not, but I think so. And so I was saying that we have a workshop and, at least be able to spend a couple hours on it. And then I think the approval then will be much faster. So anyway.
Yeah, I think I understand. The board review here, or just your comments, is only the first step of a review that you need. And then the workshop would ultimately end up, decide sort of pretty much the final document then that would be adopted after that. I think I understand.
I agree that we need another step that is not a board meeting. I don't know how you design it. I think it'll be up to the general manager for finding the time. But I think there might be an occasion where, like I say, I don't like the word heart. Somebody else likes a different word, and you've got 2 or 3 suggestions for the same thing. That's where you might need to show us that there are 3 suggestions, and then in the workshop, we'll pick the one we like, or we'll pick one that isn't any of those. I mean, and that's the kind of nitty gritty that would take time, obviously.
Yeah, it's, our intent with those kind of statements at the beginning of each strategic area is that we would pick one of those that follows a somewhat consistent style.
Yeah.
And that's what, we put one of those in the presentation, but we did leave 3 different alternatives just to see what resonated with you.
Mm-hmm. And that's another place, like the goal there, kind of like the goal of the letter is the big picture. those are intended to be able to kind of have your one phrase that you think captures the spirit of that objective and conveys it in shorthand. And so we may or may not have hit it. And if there's a better phrase, we would love to hear your ideas.
Can I make one other minor comment? One of the other things that we wanted input on, we've already heard from the general manager, she would like us to add this. But you'll see in a couple places, I think it's in the second strategic area. That I put, I started to go through and put cross references. Because there are linkages between a lot of these bulleted items in one area back to another area. Like finance and I don't know, the
Water quality.
facilities or.
Yeah, infrastructure.
And there are a lot of those where there are connections. It's really kind of a web
Right.
rather than these are very isolated siloed things. So Sarah said she would like to see that, and we can go back and make those cross references. Just
So maybe like a flow chart or?
No, I
or-
think what I had in mind was just in a bracketed reference, see, you know.
If you look at 3.2, there's an example in the bullets there.
We left a couple in there just as a reminder to bring that question to your attention.
Oh, yeah, oh, okay, yeah, in the first bullet.
Yes.
Under
and the
3.6.
last one as well. So it links it to the other section that may have a connexus.
I also have to say, I'm excited to be involved in this process. It's been a highlight of my board participation, I think, to be really building a vision. I kind of get goosebumps, I'm sorry. And I think it's a good product. I think we're putting
Yeah.
together, a significant product that the future users of our water and board members should be proud of also.
I agree. I think it's not to say that it's our doing, it's really your thoughts and we're trying to reflect on that.
Well, your guidance has been helpful.
Congratulations to you
Yeah,
all.
yeah.
I heard through this is that between the review and the design, the board would like a workshop. Is that something that we can?
Yeah, actually, I would put it between the board, the review and the approved.
Be approved, okay.
The design is kind of a separate thing.
Okay.
I think we can work on that
Ah,
aside
Yeah.
from the, from the workshop and the review. So,
So if we could get comments back from everybody by September 30th, if that's doable. And then that will give Tim and Susan time to synthesize that, and then Tim and I will work with coming up with a time for a workshop. That
Can
would
we
be
do it
separate from
sooner
a.
than that? In a week? I mean, no? I don't know.
I hate to say no, but no, there's too many priorities at the moment and.
Well, I mean, for us to review it online,
Oh, I'm gonna.
get our comments to you.
I'm gonna get to your comments. I'm gonna get it out to you tomorrow and then we'll have.
As soon as we can get them to you.
Yes, if I have them sooner, I'll get them to Tim and Susan sooner.
Okay.
But if you want to do that part sooner, that's up to you all.
That's what I'm talking about.
Staff wise, I need to give them a couple
Time,
weeks.
yeah.
Well,
And
yeah,
there, on the other thing, these are little minor things, but one thing I did notice when I was surfing is that there aren't any super recent pictures of the board, like either together or even separately. And maybe even the staff, there's a lot of new people, so we might want to think about some of that, Sarah, like just to maybe do a little
We
photo, something or
actually
other.
have a New York Times photographer coming to the district next Thursday.
Awesome.
Lots of wonderful photos for this plan.
Okay.
Excellent.
So if you all want to give me a date that you want to get your comments back to me, that helps me know how to plan, so.
I want to do it over the weekend.
yeah, that was the 30th, right?
September 30, I mean, it's really not that far away. Today's already the 18th. So that gives you, 2 weeks from today is why I picked the 30th, but
The 30th isn't 2 weeks from.
not quite 2 weeks away.
Oh, okay.
That's-
Sorry. It was
Oh, okay.
October already.
I was just, trying to figure it out. 30th is fine with me.
We need a motion for a workshop, or can we just schedule that?
I'll just schedule.
Okay, good. Citizens Advisory Chair, David Carrillo, do you have any comments on this?
Right. Thank you.
Does he get a copy of this draft?
Yes, you can get that to Dave Rio as well.
Let's say too that this workshop, when we schedule that date of necessity might be flexible too.
Thank you. Yeah, I imagine you'll need a couple weeks to synthesize all of the notes, depending on how well you can read writing and get through all of that. So we'll work together on the date. It will probably be at least a month out from now, I would imagine.
Well, that means the board meeting that you're talking about in mid-October is not gonna fly.
That's fine.
If we could do it sooner, we will. It's definitely, it's on the high priority list.
Yeah.
If it's nothing further, thank you for this part. And item B now is information regarding Volume 6 MCL.
Hmm.
That's maximum contaminant level.
I thought that was minimum contaminant.
I double checked.
Or is it? It's
Yeah.
maximum, okay.
Director, did it again. I had to read my own report here. General Manager Johnson, introductions, please.
All right, very good. So tonight we have Jim Morley here again to go over the from 6 NCL compliance, discussing the maximum contaminant level and some of the challenges that we have coming up. Tim.
Yeah, so if you want to just go ahead, Lisa, just quickly, this really focuses on a study that we conducted. When I say we, I mean the Community Water Systems Alliance, CWSA, of which Joshua Basin Water District is a participant, normally represented by Sarah. I'll mention briefly what CWSA is, and then we'll get more into the results of this study, which we did in parallel with the state's work on finalizing their regulation. So CWSA is a group of about 20-ish water districts and cities that are not really small. There are many mutual water companies that are very, very small. And it's now an association of those mutual water companies called Cal Mutuals, which my firm, Ortega Strategies Group, is the manager. We do some association management, and that's an organization that we are the manager of. And there were a number of other districts and cities that said, you know, we would like to be supportive of the small systems, and how can we be involved? And so out of that idea came the Community Water Systems Alliance, which is kind of operates under the mantra of larger systems helping smaller ones. So we, as I said, we have about 20 cities and special districts, ranging from Coachella Valley to Watsonville. And as I mentioned, here in this area, Joshua Basin is one of several that are members and participate. Most of what we do is advocacy at this point. That's the one thing that's been easiest to figure out, how can we be supportive of the small systems. But we, as you can see in the photo there, we had a tour that came through here. And we organized it really around Laurel Firestone, who's in the center of that picture, a member of the State Water Resources Control Board. We've also done some case studies. She's standing right behind Marina West there, sort of in the.
Oh, mhm.
We also, we sponsored a bill that was not enacted a couple of years ago, AB 2041, which was, the idea of it was to require more of the state when they're adopting a regulation to have more of a detailed plan of how they will ensure that everyone can actually achieve compliance with that. And the bill didn't go through, but out of that, through some negotiations, the state did agree that they would adopt a compliance period so that districts are not, you know, on the date that regulation is effective, you're already out of compliance, because that's unrealistic. You need years to actually come, you know, do the treatment or install, you know, take whatever action is necessary to come into compliance. So that is one thing, that one positive step, even though it's not really enough. But anyway, we can go on. We did also, you know, weigh in on some of the cannabis grows that were out here in the high desert and some other issues like that that other associations are not necessarily tackling. But this project, we hired an economist, really a team, to look at the regulation and the state's analysis of the regulation as it was going forward. And that's really what this presentation is about. It really was the consultants that did the work. That this is their presentation, so I'm presenting their presentation, so I might stumble a few places, and it's kind of long, so I'll kind of skip through some of this pretty quickly too. So what motivated it? Well, three things. This, as you may recall, the state adopted this policy of the human right to water, that every human being has a right to water that is clean, safe, affordable, and accessible. I bolded affordable because that was really the focus of this. The water code itself requires the state, as they're adopting a drinking water regulation, to consider the cost of compliance to customers with the drinking water standard, including the cost per customer. And then there was the case that that throughout the previous Chrome 6 regulation back in 2014 had the judge kind of weighed in on this point. He said economically feasible, which he found that the case or the regulation was disallowed because they had not done an economic feasibility analysis at that time. But in discussing that, the judge wrote that economically feasible has to mean something, and it's difficult to conceive of a definition that does not at least consider affordability. So we wanted to see what really, whether this regulation would be affordable, and compared our finding, our independent study, with what the state was proposing. So in doing that, we just accepted, as you know, and we stipulated that, okay, the regulation is the maximum contaminant level is going to be what the state said it says, or what they're proposing. So then we would see how well they address the affordability impacts on systems and their customers, particularly with an eye on the smaller systems and their customers, but also economically disadvantaged households that may be in larger systems. And then thirdly, we wanted to really get a good estimate of what the dollar amount would need to be to offset those impacts for household affordability. So I will skim through this very quickly, but you will probably recall that the first Chrome 6 regulation was adopted in 2014. It was thrown out by this judicial review in 2017. In 2020, the State Water Board came back with a white paper on their approach as to how they would analyze economic feasibility, since it hadn't been, that was why the first regulation was thrown out. And so then in 22 and 23, we went through the current regulatory process. I added the diamond there indicating this April is when the decision was made, and next month, October 1st, is when it will be actually become effective. So what did the first few slides will look at what the state's analysis was. And if you see on the left, on the y-axis on the left, it's analyzing according to the size of the system by service connections, less than 100 service connections, very, very small. And those, as you might expect, have the biggest impact on annual household compliance costs. So in other words, for those systems under 100 connections, the state estimated those customers are going to be paying as much as $1,600 a year more just because of this regulation. But then in the very largest systems, 10,000 service connections or more, the impact on households or customers would be much less, $91 they estimated on average per customer per year. So they, that looks a lot more affordable. And then in the table on the right, you can see the number of systems. There are many more small systems, 2,666. But the number of the population that they serve is actually much less than, the vast majority of people are served by the large systems, the LA Department of Water and Power, and those really large ones.
I just had a quick question. May I have a question? On the previous slide, I just didn't understand CWS size category, and it says SCs, that's service connections. Right, but what's CWS size category? What's that?
It's how many service connections are
The category.
are in that community water system.
Oh, community water system.
So it's just.
So ours would be all the way down the second one from the bottom, according to that. But then I see total service connections to the right. What's that mean?
That's if you aggregate all of those systems in that category, that's the total.
Got
number.
it. Okay.
In other words, the total number of customers, if you will,
Of impacted. Because that's not the total state.
Right, but that's total of
It's not the
everybody.
population.
Yeah.
It's the service connections. So.
In this category, but I wasn't done. I have another question. So then if we're the one from the bottom, right above the second to the last one, then we're over there. And so the cost would be 255. This is an estimate, I realize, annually, additional. Okay, because I had that wrong. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Community outreach person, Kathleen Radnich.
Questions in this analysis. I get it on connections, but if you had a 4 square mile area with one major well versus 96 square miles and 5 wells that have to be treated, is that being taken into consideration when they did this factoring of what's going to cost per household? Because I'm sorry, I don't buy it.
We didn't buy it either.
It's getting there.
Oh,
okay.
Hopefully I'll address that.
Okay.
So again, sticking with, this is the state's conclusions. Kind of 3 major conclusions that come right out of the initial statement of reasons. They say because a considerable majority of the state's impacted households will face relatively modest water bills. In other words, those very, very large customers, the very large systems, the proposed MCL is affordable for the quote general population.
Yeah.
Secondly, the MCL, they say, is economically feasible, quote, because there are sufficient resources available to potentially mitigate the challenge of compliance for the systems that are already struggling. And then thirdly, the total estimated fiscal assistance need of $73 million per year, which I'll come back to that. Approximately 9% of the pool of funding they estimated would be available for water and wastewater infrastructure improvements. So they took a look at all of the possible pots of funding they might have available, and said it's really only 9% to offset all of that $73 million per year. So we did our own analysis, which we'll talk about next. Our consultants did have some main questions that they kind of wanted to dig at in their analysis. First of all, is the state's estimate of fiscal support sufficient at $73 million? Has the state properly identified those community water systems and households with the affordability challenges? Can the state actually get the money to them? Do they have the pathways to get that money to where it's needed? And is that as sustainable over the long term to offset the impacts? And finally, will the demand for funds for this divert spending on other necessary investments that may provide greater ratepayer benefits? It's kind of at the district level. Okay. So again, the state estimated that their criteria that they used looked at three main things. Systems, and they do this based on the 2022 needs assessment. They are doing this needs assessment statewide every year now of all the systems that, trying to identify those that have needs. So based on that, they looked at systems having a baseline, medium or high affordability burden, one of the criteria in there. Systems on what they call the human right to water list, which are the ones that need the most assistance. And then systems needing to recover more than $30 per month per service connection to comply with the MCL. So that's just, that $30 is just a number out of the air, but they felt that over $30 per month would present a real burden. So this gets into what is that affordability burden, and I won't belabor this. I can provide this PowerPoint presentation, and I think Sarah may still have a copy of the final report of this study if you really wanted to read it in depth. But this just shows how the state comes up with that affordability burden. They base it on a percentage of median household income for that area. If there's an extreme water bill, which is they consider 150% to 200% of the statewide average. Percentage of residential arrearages. You talked earlier in your fiscal year-end report about essentially your arrearages, those delinquent accounts, and then the residential arrearage burden. So anyway, these are the four things that went into their affordability burden. So what did they come up with? If you look at the top line, across there, it's the number of systems impacted by the MCL. There's a total of 160, of which you all are one of the lucky ones. The second line, they estimated how much assistance would be needed in millions of dollars per year for each of those size categories. We come up with the 73 million. Their estimate of the assistance needed as a percentage of the total community water system annualized compliance costs. So for the very small systems, they estimated the state would need to provide 100% of the compliance cost, the full cost of whatever the treatment or the solution was. And then for your category, then the $5,000 and $10,000 they estimated they would still need to provide 63% of the compliance cost. And then again, on the bottom row, you get the number of households in those systems that they felt would really face an affordability challenge. Almost 140,000 households. So that kind of summarizes the state's analysis. Our team used a couple of different analytical metrics or methods that they were part of a bigger team that came up with a recommendation for the EPA on this very same thing when the EPA adopts regulations. So that they used those two, the household burden indicator and the poverty prevalence indicators are metrics that this team had come up with several years ago and recommended to EPA. So essentially, the household burden indicator, which is on the left, is the total water cost for a household as a percentage of the lowest quintile. In other words, the least affluent 20% of the population, they're looking at what the water costs for that would be. And then the poverty prevalence indicator is the percentage of households at or below 200% of the federal poverty level. So then they use those two, plus they incorporated the state's human right to water list. And they also looked beyond what the state did they looked for households, low-income households in those systems that wouldn't necessarily be deemed having a major problem, especially some of those larger systems. So we come up with some different results when we look at this. What they did was they essentially recreated the data set of all the water systems impacted, like the state had. They, I can kind of skip through this, but basically they did look at some of the socioeconomic indicators on the down to the census tract level. And here, this chart really shows the comparison. If you let's see, if you look at the number of systems is still the same number, 160 at the bottom. They came up with 87 systems that would have an impact based on their criteria, and the assistance needed would be then the fourth column is, let's see, make sure I'm looking at this correctly. Well, really the bottom line is that third column from the right, which is $110 million per year as the assistance that would be required, compared to that $73 million that the state had estimated.
Yes.
And then if you go beyond that and looked at the additional assistance for those systems, if you add in the criteria the state used of more than $30 per service connection per year, that adds another $13 million. So we'll see that if that's added to the mix, then you're looking at $123 million. Again, 70% more than what the state had estimated. Actually, the next chart, the next slide kind of gives you a side-by-side comparison. One of the interesting things here is that some of the small systems, if it's an affluent area, that $30, criteria over $30 per per month is not really necessarily an affordability challenge for some, for some areas, in a very wealthy community. It just happens to have a small system. People, some people, that would be very affordable. That criteria is really not the best one to use because it might end up with the state providing assistance to a small system that really doesn't need it if it's affluent. But where the biggest change or the biggest impact or difference was found is in the impact on those lower income households that are also in a large system. And you can see that the different analysis that our team did really shows a huge, much larger impact to those households than what the state had analyzed. So we'll go on to the next one. So then we really wanted to look at this question of whether the state has sufficient funding available. So first of all, 110 or $123 million per year is a whole lot more than what they had estimated at $73 million per year to offset these household impacts. So that's the first point. It could be a whole lot more than what they estimated. And secondly, we questioned whether they have the ability to meet that commitment over the long term.
Yeah.
Because there are other regulations coming in. There are a lot of other water-related funding needs for just infrastructure replacement and everything else that they're providing loans and grants for. And we really don't know if the funding pool is as big as it is, because we could already see when this was being done that the state was looking ahead to this year where they have a big hole in their state budget. And, oh, thank you. Thanks, David. And so it's really questionable whether the state will have all the funds that they think they would have. And then finally, would the state be able to get that funding to where it is needed? So just doing a little kind of thumbnail comparison, if you looked back at the 2014 regulation, the state at that time had estimated, they looked at they broke out the size of systems a little differently. They didn't look at 100 service connections separate from those with less than 200. So they just looked at under 200 service connections. And in 2013 dollars, they had estimated households might face as much as $5,600 per year. And that was in 2013 dollars. So it's really questionable whether their estimate this in this go round of $1,600 dollars per, so for those households with, or those systems under 100 connections, and about $800 in that 100 to 200 category is really, I mean, it just seems like it's way off. I mean, the treatment techniques have not really changed that much since 2014 to today. So, but they did in their analysis, they kind of made an assumption that 98% of the systems impacted would use one particular kind of treatment, reduction, coagulation, and filtration, which is just abbreviated RCF.
Oh, okay, good.
And that skewed things. They didn't have, I didn't find a good rationale why they made that assumption. The other thing is they assume that a lot of small systems could be consolidated and would find economies of scale in that fashion. But even consolidation has a lot of, physical consolidation has a lot of costs that were not included in those estimates. In addition, higher costs can impact the level of financial support needs. There are probably many more water systems to require needs-based or to meet those needs-based criteria. And then how higher water bills. This is a point that I tried to make to the water board, but if consumers are spending more on their water bills, that means less money to spend on other health-related needs. And so, I think that's another consideration that really needed to be taken into account. So on the long-term availability of funds, these are really questions. We feel like the state really needed to answer these, but didn't really address them. How many years can they support that level of need? What happens if they can't continue to support that? How will they allocate, and divide their funding between different competing needs and prior commitments? The funding bucket that they were talking about, which only required 9%. Well, are those available state grants, or is it principal forgiveness? And what is the level of funding already in their safe and affordable drinking water account for the fiscal year, the prior fiscal year? So then we're getting close to the end here, but some other key considerations just about how systems can access them. It's not easy, as you may have already found out, it's not easy to access fiscal, financial assistance from the state. It requires a lot of studies, a lot of homework and paperwork. It takes a tremendous, in most cases, it takes a very, very long time and a lot of personnel and expertise to do that. So there are a lot of systems that are not going to have those opportunities. And in addition, is the state personnel there to actually process all of this request for funding? There's, like I mentioned, there's a long timeline from when something is submitted to when the financial aid actually comes through.
Yeah.
And there are a lot of terms and conditions, especially on the state revolving fund, where some of that money is federal dollars. There are very onerous requirements to meet for those dollars. And then finally, two more points. Let's see. Just the ability to receive adequate funding for capital improvement planning and implementation, and the need for technical assistance for the small systems or those that are financially strained already. They're going to need a lot of technical assistance just to get access to the money and then to implement whatever solution is developed. So I think that kind of summarized in a kind of a rush, a 20-some page report that this team did for us. But we provided a lot of comments. We did meet with three of the state water board members to present our findings. But in the end, it didn't change the regulation was already pretty much baked. And so it didn't have a significant impact. But I do think that this report is one piece of evidence or data that may be used in a legal challenge to the regulation. especially on that question of whether the state this time around did an adequate assessment of the economic feasibility of this regulation. And that is a key finding that they have to make, that it's economically feasible. So that's it. I know that was kind of a long presentation,
I'll say.
a lot of information. But again, if you're interested in the full report, be happy to share that with
Vice President Doolittle, comments?
Nothing from me, thank you.
Director Fick?
Pertaining to this one. So would you count yourself as an advocate or lobbyist in Sacramento? Did you get up to there and talk to them?
those meetings were in Zoom or Teams meetings that the board set up.
Well, I heard it, and it comes under rumor that, you know, the lobbyists for the chromium-6 companies that treat this, the treatment centers that do this, or the makers of the treatment centers, are the ones that are pushing for this. Do you think that that's the situation that's going on?
I think that there are some. I was at many of the board meetings, the State Water Board meetings, either in person or online, when they were talking about this regulation. And I didn't see manufacturers of the treatment systems lobbying on behalf of it. With the exception of there was a representative of home filtration devices that was just saying, we're here to serve those small systems, because that is one of the alternate compliance methods is for those very small systems. They will allow in-home treatment systems to be used, but that comes with a whole bunch of other problems.
Yeah.
So with that exception, I think that the people who were really lobbying on behalf of this and even stricter requirements were some of the non-governmental organizations like Clean Water Action that historically lobby for the utmost, the most protective possible. Without really understanding the other side, which is the cost and the difficulty to meet that. And then, I think with our water, with the districts and cities that we represent, we were trying to point out that these costs are not feasible. It's not realistic, and we don't necessarily believe that the state can just magically take care of all these impacts.
Okay.
Director Jarlsberg?
Yeah, I like that question. Thank you. I think my question is there a possibility of changing this standard that they set that seems to actually be unrealistic for areas that don't have agricultural runoff or whatever the causes of it are? Could they reevaluate the percentage? I don't see how they could possibly be successful for most of the reasons you're saying, and why they even would push it, and instead of looking at where the actual impacts of chromium-6 is, and as a health issue for people that are drinking the water.
Well, there are, I think, two comments that are responses to your question. The first is that the jury is still out to some extent on what the health impacts of chromium-6 really are. And the public health goal, which is supposed to be the point at which there are absolutely no health impacts, that's currently being reevaluated by the a different state agency, the Office of Environmental Health Hazard Assessment. They're the ones that set that public health goal, which then in turn, a drinking water standard is supposed to be adopted as close as possible to that public health goal with consideration to technological and economic feasibility. So in some cases, you know, you can treat something to the, you know, to equal the public health goal. This is not one of those constituents like that. So, you know, the state board has also been criticized for their adoption of this regulation even before the review of the public health code was completed.
Oh, okay.
And then secondly, this could potentially be reevaluated, but it would require, just like the first time back in 2014 and 15, a legal review, a judicial review of the process the state went through and whether they really did do the appropriate economic feasibility assessment. And we think that will happen, that review will happen, and then we'll find out whether it's affirmed or whether they have to go back and reconsider this.
And are other states going through this, or is it just California?
Just California.
It's California.
And there are other states like Oklahoma, there's several states where chromium-6 occurs naturally, just like it does in California.
Yeah.
But they're not going this path. In fact, the state of Texas several years ago, they did a review like our state is doing, but they just determined that they were not going to change they were not going to set a statewide standard. And right now, as you might recall, the federal standard set by EPA is for total chromium. And that's really a proxy for chrom-6 because trivalent chromium-3 is not a health risk. But so that's really total chromium means their regulation for chrom-6. But nationally, the standard is 100 parts per billion. And the state of California currently, that was raised by EPA from 50 to 100. It was raised several years ago. The state of California left their regulation of 50 parts per billion. That's what we currently have until 2 weeks from now, when it will lower to 10.
Yeah.
And so California is really an outlier on this.
I had another kind of weird question. HR2W, I was curious what it was, and then you said what it was. Can you say what it was again?
It's short for human right to water. So.
But it said a list.
Yeah.
Can do we have access to that list?
Yes, it can be found online. What
Search
the
for it now.
state, in their annual needs assessment, they look at all this water systems across the state and analyze them according to a list of several criteria, financial criteria, water quality, compliance criteria. Have they had compliance issues, things of that nature. And for the systems that are struggling the most, mostly very, very small ones, those they put on this, what they call the human right to water list. Those are the ones they really give the highest priority to for financial assistance.
Yeah, I'm curious. I think I'm gonna look it up.
I just looked it up.
Oh,
Very
okay.
easy to find.
Okay, cool.
Director Short? Oh, yeah, earlier you had mentioned that there were possibilities for in-home mitigations for systems with that are small. Do you happen to know the limit to that off the top of your head?
200 service connection.
So it wouldn't even apply to us.
No, just for very small systems.
Okay.
And as I mentioned, that's really not a very easy solution in itself because the water system is still responsible for those
Oh.
in-home treatment devices.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so
Okay.
they have to make sure that they're replaced and monitored and all that kind of stuff, so.
And all
Okay.
connections have to agree to do it too, so. there's-
Ah, yeah,
There's no
yeah,
chance that's
yeah.
happening. And I would like a copy of this,
Sure.
the study as well.
I'll email it to
Okay.
Sarah and then she can
Send that.
distribute it.
Thank you. That's all.
I'll say something here that I'm not trying to pat myself on the back or anything when I say this, but it is addressing the thing about the $30 per household and et cetera. I was sitting in the IHOP, with a friend of mine one day, and I looked at a waitress and she was just running around working really hard in there. The place happened to be busy at the time. So I said to my friend, give me a $5 bill. And he gave me one and I handed it to her, a $5 bill, and she kissed me
Oh,
when I gave her a $5 bill.
oh,
Sometime later, we were at the market. This was a few years ago when we were on the other side. And we had a guy that would come around every once in a while and visit with us and just chat, community booth kind of a thing. And he happened to be a guy that would go around with a 3-wheel bicycle or a golf cart or something. He just pick up trash. And he actually kept track of how much he picked up even. But anyway, I gave him $40 and he started crying when I gave him $40. And those are the kind of people that I think we have to keep in mind when we talk about fighting for responsible standards and stuff like that, is that things are tight around here for a lot of people. And just a little bit of money like that, an added charge on their water bill could push them in the wrong direction financially. And they could end up being a homeless person, that kind of thing. Bill?
You talk about your loss of revenue and the drop in the water usage. Yes, it's taken up by absentee owners owning Airbnbs. Look at your electric bill. If you happen to be one of those one houses in a neighborhood of Airbnbs, you're overusing according to the electric company. But another thing is, you should look at the number of foreclosures we've had in our
Oh.
community.
yeah,
Because people are very much like Tom's saying, very close to the line and sometimes go over it.
yeah.
Bill is, we'll call him a public comment person. He's a frequent attendant at our booth at the farmer's market. He spends a lot of time with us over there. By way of introduction.
I was a director of planning for medical centers too, for about 12 years. So
That's right.
very familiar with it.
General Manager Johnson.
I actually have a question I think most people would be interested in. So OEHA is the organization, California Office of Environmental Health Hazard Assessments. And they're doing a study right now on the effects of chromium-6, right?
Yes. Yes, sorry.
The state didn't wait for that report to come out before they made this determination.
Yeah.
Do you know why they didn't wait?
Their explanation is that the OEHA is supposed to review their public health goals on a 5-year cycle. And so the water board said, you know, at any given time, they might be just ahead of, you know, an annual review of that. Well, so that's their explanation. But in fact, the current public health goal was adopted in 2011. In 2016, that first 5-year timeframe, they really didn't review it. They just kind of let it slip. And then 2021 would have been the next review. They were missing that, even though between 2016 and today, there have been 30-some scientific peer studies in peer-reviewed journals that question the fundamental health effects in the human body. And so there's really a big debate about, and this has to do with Chrome-6 as a potential carcinogen. So how does it cause cancer? And the fundamental mechanism there is really in dispute. So a lot of new scientific reports have concluded that it doesn't have, that the human gut takes care of a lot of the Chrome-6 issue. And so there's a lot of scientific debate about that right now. So I actually, that may be another question that comes out in when I will say there's a judicial review of the regulatory process. That may be another question that is part of that.
Their next review should be 2026 then?
Well, they're ongoing, it's ongoing right now.
Okay.
They
Yeah.
came out just before the MCL regulation was finalized. OEHA came out with they split it into two different parts, non-cancer and cancer effects. And they did adjust the non-cancer proposed, it's still proposed, it hasn't been finalized, but the proposed non-cancer what they call, they have a different term for it, but the health protective concentration. So they made an adjustment there, but that would still be below the MCL. So it's like 5 parts per million or something.
Thank you.
That just makes me think that the only concern is really the water we drink, not the water we wash our dishes with or our clothes with, or water our plants that might have fruit that we eat. I mean,
Sure.
it only is supposedly if we drink it, I mean, that there's an issue.
That's correct, and it's based on
And everybody drinks water different.
X number of liters of water per day over a 70-year lifespan.
Yeah.
So Well, I thank you for your interest and attention, and I will say that CWSA is with you. As a member of CWSA, we're in this fight with you, and it just doesn't seem right. And so
Thanks for coming over.
Thank you, and thank you for representing 2 organizations today. So.
Yeah, definitely.
Reports and comments for informational purposes only on subjects not covered by the agenda. The opinions of individual directors are not necessarily opinions of the board or the staff. No action will be taken. The board may provide staff with requests for future agenda items. Director reports. Vice President Doolittle.
I'm so tired and I don't feel well. I have a tooth issue, but I'm gonna try to talk about a couple things because I went to the CSDA conference and I'm always enriched by going, and then I want to enrich you as well. I want to share some things, or at least question some things to see if I just missed the fact that we're already doing these things. So one of the things I found out is that some water agencies were doing tiering based on peaking. And that's the ratio of water use by users to other water users. And then they allocate some of those costs to the higher tiers, and they use the AWWA manual for that. But then there was some invalidation by the courts because peaking has a temporal aspect, but there is something related to that, if SCE is charging us peak rates and then people are using the water at that time, you know what I mean? Then other ratepayers are supplementing the cost of that extra, what they're getting at that time. So something to think about. So the second homes thing and the Airbnbs, if people aren't using their second homes, then they are not paying for the infrastructure essentially. And one way people address this was Tahoe City addressed this by raising their fixed costs to cover these second homes. Their their basic fee is $80. And then someone else said that back east, more than half of charges for basic fees comes from fire flow rates. So, you know, and just now with wildfire and things like that, you know, in certain areas, people really need to make sure that they want to pay for this water to protect them. Let's see. Oh, and then also, there's a measure N. If your house is empty more than 180, this is a local measure. If your house is empty more than 180 days a year, you have to pay a $6,000 vacancy tax. This is Tahoe. Yeah, as far as rate increases, looks like everyone is going at 10% rate increases these days. And so then I'm gonna skip to some board member stuff. So just quickly, the Fair Political Practices Agency for reporting a board member. What defines swim lanes for board members, like where we're supposed to be. I like that phrase, swim lanes. I hadn't heard it in a long time. And we're violating, and I told the general manager this at luncheon, but we're violating our fiduciary responsibilities when we get involved in personnel matters. And the average jury verdicts for those matters are of 7 figures plus multiplier fees for lawyers. The district is exempt from punitive damage, but supervisors and individuals can be sued for those types of damages individually. Anything you do outside the scope of authority, you can be personally liable. Board members acting alone do not have the legislative shield of immunity. Board members on social media can be making admissions against interest of the district. That's what's called, admissions against interests. And voice of one gives way to the majority. A board member who does field visits has to be careful to not offer commentary, but to just listen. Otherwise, it can be used in lawsuits and you can be individually liable. So there was a lot on here. This is a heightened arena, so we should be using a formal style. I say that often, and I still mean it, that I think that we speak out of turn, and I think it'd be better if we used, a little bit more decorum. And you can use an ad hoc committee to work on a code of conduct for the board. And let's see, let me just quickly, I was reviewing this earlier just to make sure I could, I was gonna get everything. Okay, anyway, let's see, there's just a second, looking at this really quickly. Okay, that's all. That's what I want to share. Thank you.
Director Fick?
Well, that sounds like it makes me nervous, like that last part, geez, okay.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, it gave me pause, I'll say. Yeah.
Well, I'll need more details on that report. I did go to last Monday, I went to the SBA dinner. And it was entitled What the Bleep Was the Information. I gave one to the general manager and one to the president because it was pertaining to public comments within meetings and the Brown Act. And it's mostly, it was by Best and Krieger, and I sat at the table with the lawyer who did the presentation. He was a young man based in Redlands and had an effect because most of these problems with public comments happen in city or civic situations, rarely in water boards, because water boards don't have that kind of conflicting situation with society. And he was at meetings in Redlands, the civic Redlands, and they had the Proud Boys imported from wherever they came from. They flew in and had their little discussion regarding things that were provocative because there were some council members of Redlands that had made statements, I don't know if in pro or con to what the Proud Boys were concerned. We didn't get that detailed about the situation. And and that going on. several things. One, I did tell them what we hadn't had public comment problems at all, except for one county agent who denigrated me a year ago. And so other than that, and then also, he wanted to thank the Joshua Basin Water District for raising a general manager properly. Because general manager or former general manager of this district, Kurt Sauer, was an interim general manager in Idlewild for about half a year in 2023. And this young lawyer was having to help Kurt Sauer straighten out something involving the Idlewild Water District. I don't know what it was. We didn't get that detailed because obviously, you know, it would be a long discussion on that situation. So interesting meeting, and there was plenty of information as in the handout. He followed things as to instances of what you can do with a disturbance, whether the disturbance was to be tolerated or not tolerated. And so he went through that. That was part of the situation. So, okay, so that covers that part. Also, I wanted to announce that there is going to be a up close KCDC 1077 up close show this Friday coming up, 2 days from now, 10 a.m. is a discussion with 4 board members or attempted board members of the Joshua Basin Water District. And it includes Jane Charlesburg and VP Stacy Doolittle. And maybe I should put in, I have full endorsement of both of them right now. So I don't know if that's within what we can do, but that's not. Oh, and then they are expecting questions for the board, all that have to be asked of all of them. And then also, last evening I was at what's called the JTABC formation. They haven't agreed to call it the JTABC, but they don't have the technicalities filled out. They were very happy to see me as David Shook was there, our director, David Shook. I was curious as to what his participation in that. He is obviously Joshua Basin Water District. I'm there as head of graphics. I'm a business, fine art screen printing business, which I'm not retail really. I'm pretty much in the trade organization kind of thing, but they were very happy to see me, as he can attest, because I was referred to several times in that meeting. So I'd be curious as to hear a report from him as to what his activity with that board was. Well, it's not even a board yet. It's just a very loose formation. And they seem to be very organized in what they're doing.
What do the letters stand for?
Joshua Tree, and then that's their
Association of Businesses and Culture, I think.
alliance. It's up for play. They haven't finalized it. I was the one vote for the arts and whatever, but I was the one vote. The other 15 won over me. So, oh well.
David Shook attended it on behalf of the district. They invited me to attend. They wanted just to make sure the water voice was there. I was not able to attend, so I asked David to step in my place, and he reported back to me this morning that it was a good meeting. There's not a lot that we can really do there, but we're there to support and hear any issues that impact the water district.
I'm in the brand identity category or group.
Anything you want to share about?
That sums it up.
Well, I'm done here.
Director Jonesberg.
I've been sick a lot over the last month, so I don't have really a lot to report, but I am better. That's what I'm reporting. Onward and upward is my mantra, but I'm looking forward to this candidate forum on Friday morning. And I think it will be a chance to represent JBWD positively.
Director Short.
I just want to say good luck to you both on Friday.
Oh, thanks.
Well, yeah, about decorum and meetings and stuff, just, I like the idea of having a sense of informality here. There is a structure to these things. There's laws that we have to comply with and all of that. But I just like everybody to have their fair chance at speaking. And a lot of this is impromptu. And something that the person wants to say may not occur at exactly the right time. But I do like to allow people to, Bill kind of did it a little bit there where but this is his water company too. He lives here, so. So that's just, I like fairness, I like openness, and I like a decent exchange of ideas like we're having at this very second. We'll just keep going. We'll do the best we can. And I sure appreciate Jeff being here I've told him this at the CSDA thing or whatever it was. That I feel very comfortable when he's here watching what I'm doing. It's just, to
Yeah,
so
reassuring.
that I don't get too far aligned. And also, I always encourage people to prompt me if they see that I'm committing an omission of some kind or I'm overlooking something. I view that as being constructive, not as a criticism. David, did you want to say something?
Yes, I noticed there's a third plaque near the door there. I need an explanation of that, likely from our general manager.
Speaking of that.
It's in my reports.
Good.
We're done, go ahead.
Okay, very good. All right, so the certificate on the wall, we have been recognized by California Special Districts Association. That is our official district of transparency certificate. So all the staff worked very hard to get all of the documents together that qualifies for that. Lisa Thompson coordinated the effort, took her several months, and we have all of that information available as well on our website that we seem to get complimented on a lot. Director or Vice President Doolittle went to one of the presentations at the CSDA, and our website was used as the website of choice.
Ooh.
So we were very, very proud of that. Yeah,
Oh,
using it to
yay.
show everyone else how to do it. So thank you. Special thank you to Lisa, though. Without her efforts in getting all that together, that wouldn't happen. So that's what that certificate is. So we got to go up on stage last Wednesday with Vice President Doolittle, President Flowen, Lisa and myself, and get honored with that award. Let's see. Okay, so we have next Thursday, the U.S. Water Alliance folks will be here as they shared with us at the last board meeting, and President Flowen and Vice President Doolittle will be here for the lunch portion of that. They'll also be manning our farmers market on the following Saturday.
Right.
Yesterday, I attended the Morongo Basin Pipeline Commission meeting along with Commissioner Flowen at that meeting. And we learned a lot about water recharge and the operations and maintenance of Mojave Water Agency. Very informational meeting. So if you ever want to zoom in, it's definitely worthwhile. As you may have seen, we have a new temporary sign that was fashioned by our own staff. That's for U.S. Water Alliance purposes. We have that New York Times photographer coming on site to take some site photos. We wanted to make sure we had our logo out there, but we are working with the company right now on a permanent version. It'll look a little different than that, and it'll have a little bit more contrast, so you'll be able to see it a little bit better. We have a meeting to discuss the windbreaks for the building tomorrow, and officially, as of today, I haven't even shared this with Scott yet, our hazard mitigation plan is complete and FEMA approved. So that was a big undertaking, and really glad to have that behind us for this period of time. And David, did you have a little bit about cyber grant that you wanted to share?
Yep, the CSDA recommended cybersecurity grant. Director Short had mentioned it, so I met with our Matt Disher, the president of Southwest Networks today. We went through the survey portion, and I'm working on getting the login to the rest of it before the deadline. So.
Anything? All right, that's the end of our report.
Thank you very much. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I'll make the motion.
Second?
I'll second robustly.
Okay.
This meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
Have a good night. Enjoy the hopefully cooler weather.
Oh,
Yeah,
Yeah.
nice.